Hey, everybody, welcome. Today is Wednesday, November 13th, and we are glad to have you with us today. If you're here live or if you're watching on replay, it's great to be here. As always,
Fears are
we don't actually care
not
about
the
your
politics.
politics,
No.
right? That's not our place to speak to that. But I do think, insofar as it impacts your studies, then it is in our domain, and we want to be able to respond to that. Now, I've heard a little bit from a few people who I know were very upset about the results. And I think the thing that is important to understand here is that, as Tracy's going to talk about later, that's not in your control right now. What is in your control is studying and passing the bar exam. If you believe that your presence in the bar makes a difference in the rule of law, in the life of our country, in the political nature of our country, as I do, then I think it's important that you focus on passing the bar. If you don't think it has any impact and you're just doing it for fun to take the bar, okay, that's up to you. I don't think that's where most of our students are, however. So I want to encourage you at this stage, as you come out of the high or the low of last week, that you now return your focus to the task at hand, which is to prepare and study for the exam. And one of the things that I think we have to be explicit about is that we're clearly now moving into the holiday season. There's an enormous number of distractors. These are nice distractors typically, but they're distractors. And it's going to become really important that you start to really lock in and start scheduling time on your calendar to study every day. If you think February is a long way away, in bar exam days, you're wrong. This is the time. You have no time to waste or to lose. If you're taking the exam in July of 2025, you've got a little longer runway, but you still need to be studying on a pretty active basis. What bothers me, what concerns me, and Tracy, you can speak to this as well, is when a student says, I'll start thinking about submitting essays and coaching and doing some of that work in December. Because what happens is December rolls in and we're inundated with holiday messages and things to do. And somehow that month just slips away from us. And then suddenly we're into January. And that's just really pushing it for most people. So it's important to get underway now. Would you agree?
Oh, absolutely. The time to have started was at least last week. So if you haven't started yet, don't don't think you should wait until after Thanksgiving because then it's just too easy to say, I'll wait till after Christmas. And then you're up against it. And honestly, you're not going to pass the exam if you give yourself just 1 month to get ready for it.
Yeah, I think that's true. And so you may get tired of hearing us say you've got to get underway, but that's our job to tell you you've got to get underway. And whether it's because of the holidays or family commitments or work commitments or politics, this is the no excuse zone now that we're in. There is no excuse for not studying. And if you're not going to study, don't even bother trying to sit for the February exam. This is the time that you have to be underway. So we're going to talk a little bit more specifically later about things that you need to be doing. But I wanted to get that up front because I know not everybody stays all the way through the webinar. So I just wanted you to hear that. If you're saying, hey, I'm going to add some coaching later, later is now. This is the time to do it. Not because we need your money. That's not the issue. We need you to get started so that we can work with you so that you can get the improvements that you need. I know that's particularly challenging for people that just took the California bar exam in July because they just got their results last Friday. And I want to talk a little bit about those results. But I know that for this group, it's really difficult because they've got to go from the emotional response to, in this case, you were not successful on the exam, to studying right away. You don't get the luxury that people in Florida or some other states had that got their results way back in September. If you were a California bar taker, whether you were in our course or not, and you were not successful in July, you just got your results and now you got to really turn and get into it. So let's talk about California results first, and then we'll go from there. The results, as I said, came out last Friday. It's interesting. California has not yet reported out their repeat bar taker pass rate. I'm not sure why they're not doing that. Typically, jurisdictions don't like to put out the bad news, and that's certainly what this will be. The overall pass rate in California was 54%. If we compare that to July of 2023, that pass rate was 52, so it's up 2%. And if you've been following social media or some of the other pundits on the bar exam, you'll hear them talk about this 2% gain as being a big deal. And it's great for the people that pass, but to be perfectly candid about it, that's a first time taker rate for the most part. And it doesn't really impact our audience a great deal. They don't really mean a lot. A 2% gain is not a big jump when you consider who the group is. That often also leads to a conversation that I get a lot of at this point, which is it better to sit for the February or the July exam? And I did want to address that because it comes up a lot when we talk about California. There's actually no difference in the exams themselves anywhere in the country between February and July. The difference is in who sits for the exam. In February, of course, you've got a lot of repeat bar takers, and that skews the number. It makes it a
Yes.
much lower number. But when we look at the exams themselves, there's no difference. And the examiners will tell you there's no difference either. So it doesn't really matter. You gain no advantage by waiting, saying, I'm going to skip the February test, I'll jump to the July test. That's really not going to make much of a difference. I just want to say, if you were not successful in the July exams, don't wait till next July just for that reason. That's not a good reason to do it. Now, if you were in our course and you were not successful in the California exam, we need to hear from you and we need to see your score sheets right away. And I'll set up an appointment to talk with you about your results. To those of you who are in our course and pass the exam, you're probably not listening today, but congratulations. And we are doing some interviews with successful California bar takers, as well as some other bar takers in the UBE in Florida and some other states. So there's an opportunity to share their insights and their success stories. If you took our course and took the July 2024 exam in any jurisdiction, including California, and you were not successful, you need to contact us in order to enable your course. At this point, we start removing people from the course that we've not heard from. And you have a lifetime pass guarantee, but you've got to send your score sheet in and communicate with us to let us know. Tracy, when you think about somebody who's starting out right now for the February 2025 exam, if they're retaking the exam, retaking the course, do you have a sense of how many hours they should be putting in right now in their studies?
Yes, I have a number, but I think it's more a mindset that needs to be in your brain that this is going to move up on your priority list, if not number one, at least number two or number three at this point. And you need to divide up your hours accordingly. I think it's really hard. We haven't seen much success with people who are working full time and then trying to take the bar, especially retakers. I think part of that is the distractions that there are when you have another job. And then this becomes something you do late at night or early in the morning when maybe you aren't as focused. So I think it's really about prioritizing this right now and working at least 15 or 20 hours a week on concentrated study in 3-hour blocks with breaks. But I think that's probably where you need to be right now. And then you need to, I think, sit at your desk and clear the decks. What can be put aside for now? What don't I have to worry about right now? What can someone else take off my shoulders now? Maybe it's bill paying, maybe working out your kids' soccer schedules. Maybe there's a partner of yours or a spouse of yours or even a friend of yours that would be willing to take over those tasks for you so that you have a clear road to study.
Yeah, I think that's so important because it's easy to get discouraged. And then we start pushing things back, and then we try to compress this into a short period of time, which is, we know what the big box bar reviews do, but that's really mostly for 3Ls, 4Ls that are just coming out of school that have no other obligations and they're in a study mode already. And that describes virtually none of you that are in our audience. So I think it's really amnesia to think I can just sit down for 6 or 7 weeks and pound this out. I just did an interview yesterday with a successful student of ours. This is a gentleman who's been licensed for many years in many jurisdictions. And he talked about the fact that he really had forgotten how much work it is and how much effort has to go into it in order to be successful. There is no exam in the country today that you can just casually stroll into and pass. Just doesn't happen. I know we sound like broken records here, but this is really important that you get underway and start putting in, I think, at least 15 or 20 hours. And I'd like to talk to you if you've been in our course and we're not successful. so we can figure out what you got to do differently. It's really frustrating, I know, for students to take the exam and not be successful. It's equally frustrating for us as coaches and mentors to offer the same advice time after time to people and they just don't incorporate it. They just keep doing the same old thing. And then they wonder why they're getting the same old results. It's really important, I think. If you really want to pass, this is the time to do it. We're talking about California a little bit. Let me just briefly update you on what's going on with California for February of 2025. As you undoubtedly have heard, they are switching away from the legacy bar exam offered by the National Conference of Bar Examiners, and they are going to a test that is being prepared for them by the Kaplan Company. Kaplan is leaving the retail bar review course world in California, whatever that means. And they are now starting to put together some practice tests. And there's been a very strange development in which the California bar examiners are saying, if you'll take our practice test, we're going to give you a boost on the actual bar exam. This is a unprecedented step to take. I'm not sure how it comports with fairness and equity, but that's their decision. And if you took one of those practice tests, I think it was earlier this month, then you get a boost of a few points on the actual bar exam. That to me is crazy, but there you go. In any event, if you are preparing for the February 2025 exam, a couple of notes in California. One, it will be an in-home testing. You will be tested and you will take the test at home. You will not go to a large testing center. And secondly, the format will remain the same. You'll have 5 essays, 1 performance test. We assume you'll have a 200 question multiple choice test on day 2. Test will, as I said, be written by Kaplan. It is by state statute in California. They cannot make it substantially different than what's already been given. At the same time, they can't make it exactly the same or they're going to have a copyright problem. So we've talked about that before. It's a very fine line to walk. In any event, you want to use the existing Celebration Bar Review materials. They're perfectly appropriate for everything that's coming up in the exam. Should anything change, like some strange allocation of questions in a subject or a reemphasis of subjects, we'll let you know. As of this writing, none of that has occurred. So everything will look the same, except you'll take the exam at home and it won't be administered by the NCBE.
The thing that is just weird to me, Jackson, is we're on this Q&A every week and nothing has changed. We don't have any information. We have not been, and it's not just us, there has not been any information that has come out about what's going on here.
Yeah.
Yeah,
So
it's,
you need to study and you need to follow what we've got. We're
yeah,
trying to change the nomenclature a little bit to not say multi-state, but really that's what it is. It's the same thing. So don't let that confuse you when you're inside the California course. We will keep you updated as we find out anything. They're not saying anything. We're just waiting to see how all of this cycles around and what the examiners do. It's going to be a very busy couple of months in California, I think, for those folks. So good luck to all of them. With California results coming in, that closes out the July 2024 season. I guess I would say to you, it was pretty much as expected. Results were slightly higher for first-time takers and stayed pretty consistently in the 20 to 30% rate for repeat bar takers. Congratulations to all of our students who passed. We're very pleased about that. There were lots of success stories, and we are trying to bring some of those to you. But if you are listening to this or watching this and you did not take Celebration Bar Review and you need to retake your exam, I strongly encourage you to reach out and contact us. I think that we are still probably the most successful company out there dealing primarily with retakers and non-traditional students. One other comment I would make in the political realm, because we have a lot of foreign trained attorneys, we have a lot of folks who are maybe thinking about coming to the US. I would again try to silence some of that chatter that you're hearing. Nobody knows for sure what's going to happen. Nobody knows what the results of a new presidential administration will be. And I would not wait to make your bar exam decisions based on whatever is going on there. I would move forward and we will just have to see what happens. I have heard from some people that are foreign trained who are apprehensive, understandably, about what the future holds for them in terms of coming into the US. Again, that's beyond our portfolio, but I would say you should continue to study until we know more. That's what we can tell you. Any other sort of thoughts you've got, Tracy, about results?
Amazing to me that it's November 13th and we're just now getting California results.
Yeah, it's,
That's
I
just
think,
cruel.
cruel and it's unfair. And if you got your results and you don't want to sit for February, I certainly understand that. Just let us know. It doesn't make a difference to us. I think there are lots of reasons to look at the July exam. One is we'll have a test under our belts with this new piece. But again, if you've been preparing for the February 2025 exam in California, you can rest assured we got you covered. You'll be ready for the test. It's just a matter of your time and your effort. I wanted to talk about some new features, some things that we are adding to the course as we've been going along. You've heard me talk in the last couple of webinars about something called deep dive podcasts. This is a AI generated or enhanced product that we are putting into the course. And we've done some AI deep dive podcasts, which are really fascinating to listen to. We've crafted them, but it's not our voices. We've created those for all of the multi-state subjects and some of the tougher subtopics within the questions. You will find those identified as optional deep dive podcasts at the end of every unit in your online course. So that has been in place now for a couple of months. And it's a great place if you're going back or if you just want an overview of a topic. It's a nice conversational 20-minute or so podcast along with some written material to help you see that subject. Now, the addition that we've made in the last month has been to take that same technology and approach and start applying it to the essay questions from July 2024. Historically, what we've done with essay questions when they come out is that we publish them in our books and we write our model answers to them. This year, what we're doing differently is instead of putting them into the books, we're putting them online with the model answer, with the question, with the drafter point sheet, if there is one, with our model answer, and we've created a deep dive podcast talking about all of that. Now, those answers have been done for the UBE for July of 2024. You'll find them in its lesson 43, and it's a good place to look through all 6 of those essays and the answers that we've drafted, which are not perfect, but they're certainly written in the FLA structure, and the deep dive podcast, which incorporates the drafter point sheets, the outlines, everything that you need. If you took the UBE in July 2024, I would start with those lessons, just going through each of the questions and comparing it to your answers just to get a sense of what was going on. If you're working with one of us as coaches, it's also a really good place to start that coaching series so that we can look at what you did back in July and what you're doing now. Now, we've also added those questions for Florida bar takers using the 3 essay questions from July of 2024. Again, you'll find them near the end of your Florida online course, and all 3 essays. We've got the question, model answer, and the deep dive podcast. We've just gotten the California essays in our hands in the last day or two, and we are starting that same process in California, and we will be posting those. They will be, again, practically the last assignment in California, but we'll put up all 5 of the essays and our model answer and the deep dive podcast. So great place to start there. In terms of the performance tests, we're still playing around with how to do those. I think we're going to try the same approach, but it's going to take us a bit of time to get there. So be patient as we do that if you're in the UBE, California, or Georgia. And of course, we will work on the Georgia essays once they release the questions, which they still haven't done, which is bizarre. But once we get those, we'll put them out. So here's the quick summary. We are not putting July 2024 essays and answers in our printed books. We're putting them only in our online course for this exam. We want to just see how this works. It's something different. I like it because it means it's current. If you had a set of printed books, it's not that your books now become out of date. So I think it'll be interesting. But we would love your feedback. We have gotten really positive feedback on the deep dives that we've done around the subjects, and people are starting to use some of these essay deep dives, but love to hear from you.
Well, I appreciate that you've been working on this, Jackson, and providing this to the students. I wish I had this when I was studying for the bar. I think it's another safety net for you to make sure that you're on track with your studying and what you think the material is telling you. To look at these deep dives, I think, is a real good checks and balance on your work.
Yeah, I think it is too. And I really like the idea of an informal conversation. If you're listening, if I hadn't told you it's AI, you would not know. You just won't know. It's extraordinary. But I think the ability to hear it in this more conversational way is a great way to overview it. We call it a deep dive, but really it starts as an overview. And then you've got all the ancillary material that you can pull up. And if you want to print out the questions and the model answers, they're right there. You can print them. They are downloads that are available for you. So again, UVE is done with the essays. Florida's done with the essays. California, we're working on right now. Georgia's still to come. And then we'll cycle back to the performance test. So a cool thing. And I think it's important to do it. One other note about updates. Obviously, there are changes ahead, I think, in terms of constitutional law, criminal law, maybe some other subjects based on the politics of the last week. But it's going to take a very long time for those things to become testable on the bar exam. Even though they're realities, it just takes a long time. And we've seen how long it's taken. We're not seeing questions about Roe being overturned or Hodges or some of these other cases that have come along. And I know there's been talk about Obergefell potentially coming off the books and other things. Again, this is a distractor for the purposes of the bar exam. In real life, it's important. In the bar exam, it has virtually no impact. So when and if any of those things change as they impact the bar exam, we'll let you know. But we're trying very hard to limit, and I'm doing this, if you're not watching, I'm making blinders around my head. We're trying very hard to keep our students from getting distracted by that because the bar examiners are not testing those changes. Those are still a couple years down the road. And frankly, that's when the next generation bar exam will start to kick in the early jurisdictions. So we're still, what are we, at least a year away from that, right? A few small states in 2026. But most of the big states that are going to do something will be 2028. So we're still in the legacy exam for, I think, a while to go, right?
Yes. And the ones that say they're going to start in 2026, I'm not holding my breath.
Yeah, I agree. It's certainly possible that they'll push back. All right. So that's where we are in terms of course updates and going forward. Now, I also want to say that this is, as we started on the webinar today, this is the time to start upgrading, are in the course, and you need personal coaching. Please go ahead and order that now. You can choose your mentor and you can pay for it over a 12-month period with Klarna, Affirm, Afterpay. We have a 12-month payment program of our own. It'll cost you a little more going those directions. If you want to just make the payment in full, you'll get a discounted course price, and you'll see all of that in the Upgrade Center in your online course. Tracey, I wanted to just ask you, because we've certainly seen the value of coaching for people that passed in July of 2024, didn't we?
We did. We encourage you to listen to those interviews and watch those interviews, and you'll see that theme come up over and over.
Yeah, it really does make a difference. We want to work with you and want to give you the guidance and the direction. I think sometimes when I do these sort of post-mortem calls or results calls with students and we've got their essays up and they say to me, I was writing the way you told me to. And then we pull up the essay from the actual exam and it's nothing like what we talked about. It's interesting how people morph into their own idea of what they think the writing style is. And I think the only way to counteract that is to actually have the work with us to fix it. Also, as coaches, we are accountability partners, and I want to talk about that a little bit more in a moment. But it is an accountability process of I've got to get this writing done, and I want to hit some benchmarks and get some things done. Sign up now. I guess that's the bottom line. If you want to get coaching, I believe this is the optimum time to do it.
Get your head straight around it, that you're going to listen to what we have to teach you, and you're going to follow our advice and follow our plan because this plan works. Your plan interspersed with our plan is not going to work. Your old way of doing things instead of our plan hasn't worked. It's not going to work. Fear is just such a big element when you go into the exam. People get afraid. I think they just ditch everything that they've learned and fall back into an old pattern. And then their essays are not good and their MBE scores are not good and their MPTs are deficient. Get your head around it and then sign up for coaching.
I definitely think that's true. When I'm talking to people who are successful, not exclusively, they're not all coached up students, but a lot of them are. And if you were retaking the exam, why wouldn't you get all the help you can get? I think it's certainly important to do that. You mentioned accountability partners. I've had a fair number of students ask me over the last week or so, can you find an accountability partner for me? And sometimes it's just very general. Some people have said, I want to have somebody that meets the following demographics. Our customer base isn't big enough that I can find a 45-year-old single female with 3 children taking the New York bar exam for the 4th time. I just don't have that. So what I'm going to recommend for you, because I do think accountability partners are valuable, I think it can be very helpful. We have a community group. If you are in the course, we have a course space for you called the Extra Mile. Go ahead and post in there that you're looking for an accountability partner. If you're taking the UBE, it doesn't matter if you're a New York student and somebody's a New Mexico student. It's exactly the same exam. So don't limit yourself that way. You don't have to be in the same geographic or physical location to take advantage of this. You can Zoom just like the rest of us. And I think that works perfectly well. Now, could a California student have a Florida accountability partner? They could. It's probably better to have a California to a California, but I wouldn't worry too much about the demographics. I think the real point is anybody that's studying for the exam is probably a reasonable accountability partner. You agree, Tracy?
For the most part, I think where you might get into some issues is where one student has to take an MPT and the other one doesn't.
Yeah,
But
that's the only thing.
but the accountability part, it's more important, I think, that you can connect with somebody and that you can hear the truth from them and act on it. And that you are willing to tell the truth to yourself and to somebody else. If someone is not being accountable, and that could be you, that could be your accountability partner.
Yeah, exactly. I think accountability partners can be really helpful, really useful. So what I would do is in the community group, just say, here's who I am, here's what I'm looking for, and wait to see if somebody comes up. We can certainly try to be matchmakers, but the problem is there's confidentiality and privacy issues, and it gets difficult for us, frankly, to do that. Sometimes that's just not possible. Where we can, we certainly are not opposed to it and we're glad to do it, but there are some limitations there on our end. Now, we have historically done what we call group coaching. These are Zoom calls, last an hour. We do them different dates, different days of the week, different time. Tracy does one, Amanda has done one, Bobka does one, and I may do one coming up this season. But we've decided to do it a little bit differently. There have been too many instances where we set them up and we just got insufficient participation. And obviously, our coach's time is valuable. So, what we are headed towards, we will resume coaching calls, group coaching calls in December, but we're going to require that you sign up in advance for those so we know if we've got enough people to make a call. And we will do that through the community group. We'll send out an email and let you know how that's going to go over the next week or so. It doesn't matter. They're not built around a particular jurisdiction. So we typically will get people from Georgia, California, Florida, or the UBE, or all of them into a call. The difference really is just when we offer the calls and who is leading them. So be on the lookout for that. We'll resume that in December and we will run that up until the February exam. Yeah,
And yeah, they'll still be free. Don't worry about that.
oh, yeah,
But
absolutely.
here's the thing. This is part of the accountability. We want you to have some skin in the game. And if you sign up and you don't come for some reason, okay. But if you continually sign up and then don't come, then we're going to want to talk to you about what's going on. What's going on here? What's going on in your program? So it's a better way for us to track you and your studies and also be an accountability partner for you in that regard.
Yeah.
Not
I,
required to go to any of them, but it's a free hour with an expert in how to get you over this bar. And so we scratch our heads sometimes when we don't have enough people showing up.
yeah,
Yeah. What's the reason why you wouldn't do that?
yeah, exactly. And I don't bar review that does anything like that. So I hope.
Okay.
All right. So, Tracy, somehow I managed to use 40 minutes already. I know. How do I do that? But I'm going to turn it over to you.
There was one student question. Did you
Oh,
answer it?
yeah. Question. We're not getting a lot of questions
Yeah.
right now. It tells me people aren't really locking in as much as they should. But student said, if I took the UBE and I passed, would I be able to waive the multi-state in Florida? The answer is if your UBE multi-state score is 136 scaled or better, yes, you can waive that part, but you cannot waive into Florida. You cannot waive into California. You cannot waive into Georgia. Can't waive into New York, Texas, any of those states. You got to sit for the exams. So there are some rules around scores that can be transportable, and you should check with the bar examiners in your jurisdiction. Now, Tracy, you want to
Okay.
talk about what we can control and we can't control. I'm going to turn it over to you.
Yeah, and this really comes out of the national drama right now and the feeling on the part of many people that they don't have any input or control into what's going on. And some others that feel like they have a lot of control. But really what we have control over is our micro world. The macro world, we don't have any say over it. We're not the deciding vote in the Senate. We're not state representatives. We're not governors. And we're not the president of the United States. So we don't have control over all of what's going on in Washington right now. But it is certainly a distraction. And so with that, it'd be good to just sort of review in your micro world what you do have control over and what you can maybe give up. This is part of what I was talking about earlier about swabbing the decks, getting the things off your desk that you don't really need to deal with right now, maybe delegating some other tasks to other people so that you can concentrate on what you're doing. So let's take a look at that's not the one I want. No, I want to do this one. Yeah, let's do this one. Okay. It's just simple what I can control and what I can't. And I think this is really a very good representation. I would suggest and offer and invite you to screenshot it. You do that by Command Shift 3 and have it on your desktop, maybe even print it out, maybe even tack it up on your wall. Because as you're working through your assignments, sometimes we just get completely overwhelmed. And then you're like, I'm not in control of anything. I can't catch up. I can't do what I want to do. I can't reach my goals. I don't understand this material. I can't do it. In your control and out of your control. Out of your control is the past. All right. If you just took the exam and you just didn't pass it, that's the past. You can't go back and do anything about that now, except you can take what you get from the bar examiners, bring it forward to Jackson, who will study it with you and see what course of action you need to do differently this time around. But he's not going to go back and go over this question and that question. We're not going to go back and bemoan what happened in the exam or that it wasn't fair or that the instructions weren't clear, anything like that. We're going to move forward. So the past, the future, and the future, the big world future is not something in your control. And worrying about it doesn't change anything. And having anxiety about the future doesn't change the future at all. This is where we suggest that you start limiting your access to the news, limiting your access to that macro world so that you can focus on your micro world. The actions of other people you cannot control. You can't control how your family or your beloved feels about your bar journey. You can't control what your parents say or your friends say or what other people say in other bar review courses. You can't control any of that. And you can't control their opinions either. They have a right to their opinions. You don't have to listen to them necessarily. And you can be your own advocate and just say, this isn't helpful. It's not helpful for me to hear what you think about my bar review journey. The things that happen around you, you can't control. What you can control is your reaction to those things. And what other people think of you is also out of your control. The outcome of your efforts, once you click send or submit, it's out of your control. And then it's up to the bar examiners and their machines to grade what you have done. So that's out of your control. And how others take care of themselves is out of your control as well. So, what's in your control? First of all, your boundaries. Boundaries are gifts that we give ourselves to keep us from getting hooked by our vulnerabilities. Let me say that again. Boundaries are gifts that we give ourselves to keep us from getting hooked by our vulnerabilities. What do I mean by that? If your vulnerability, for example, is financial insecurity, then you need to perhaps put some boundaries around your discretionary spending. Perhaps you need to prioritize your spending. Perhaps you need to clear some of your debt, look for other ways to get 0% cards or short term loans, things like that, so that you can devote resources to what you need to do to be successful in passing the bar. Once you pass the bar and you're practicing law, all these little expenses that you have, and I do mean little, even the course price is little when you think about getting into law and starting to make a good salary from your law practice. So you set up your boundaries to protect you from your vulnerabilities. Maybe your vulnerability is what your parent says to you or thinks about you and how they judge you. Maybe that just sets you off and puts you in a very dark place when you have a conversation with your parent and your parent is criticizing what you're trying to do here and telling you that you're never going to measure up, you're never going to pass it. Hopefully, your parents are very supportive. But if you had a parent or a sibling or a friend that's saying this, then then you can put up a boundary and say, we're not going to talk about my bar exam journey because you're not supportive of it. And I'm going to talk to people at Celebration Bar Review, my cohort, my coaches, because they have a positive attitude towards my ability to pass this exam. So that's the biggest one. Your thoughts and actions are in your control. Like I said, how you react to people, what you do in response to what other people do or what happens out in the bigger world, that is within your control. This is a really good time to set your goals. What are your long-term goals? What is keeping you from meeting your goals? And what are your short-term goals? How can you manage your time better so that you can get through the material and not be stressed out the last 2 or 3 days before the exam because you still have essays to write, MPTs to try to figure out, and substantive things to work on your mind maps around. So, setting goals right now is a really good thing. Even if you decide you're not going to actively study until next week, this is a really good time to set your goals. What you give your energy to is in your control. If you are sitting on your phone, looking at Facebook, playing games, playing Candy Crush or whatever the games are all day long, you're giving your energy to something that isn't going to get you to where you want to be. It's not going to meet your goals. So that's what I'm talking about, clearing the decks, getting things off of your desk, off of your phone. I finally just took all the games I had on my phone and I deleted them all because I was wasting so much time playing Scrabble and whatever you want to say. I was just wasting time. So, what you give your energy to is within your control. How you handle challenges is in your control. Again, if you need a life coach or you need an accountability partner, this is the time to find one. And you can find it in the community page. You can put something out for that. And you can ask us and we may have suggestions for you. But this is the time that you figure out how you're going to handle challenges. And the biggest one of all is taming your inner critic. We've talked about this so many times about what was known as your super ego, that voice in your head that tells you you're never going to pass, you're not good enough, you're stupid, you're slow, you don't have good writing skills, all the things that you hear from that voice in your head. And we have ways and techniques, and we have a class you can sign up for called Taming the Super Ego, Taming the Inner Critic. And we'll show you how to do that. But you have control over how you speak to yourself, believe it or not. You can tell that inner critic to go have a seat in the corner and let you run your own life now. So I think this is the time for you to get out of your own way, figure out these things that you can control, let go of the things you can't control, and then start working towards the goals that you set.
Awesome. Thanks, Tracy. This is really important stuff. And I know some of you are saying, what does it have to do with the rule against perpetuities? Nothing and everything. These are the things that really make a difference for people. And when we talk to the ones that are successful, I think you would agree, Tracy, these are the people that control what they were able to control and didn't let all of the other noise and drama and friction get in their way. And they're just totally focused on what they're doing.
That's right. Total focus.
Yeah. And this is the time to get your total focus. I know that's hard, but middle of November, yeah, it's game on, time to get going. So wanted to make sure everybody got that. Thank you for sharing that message. I hope that's helpful. That's all we've got on our agenda for today. We will be taking a couple weeks off around the holidays, around Thanksgiving. We will return on Wednesday after Thanksgiving. And that's when we really put the foot down and go hard towards the February exam. So make sure you join us that first Wednesday in
December
and we'll-
4th.
December 4th. We'll be here at, excuse me,
Mountain Time. And we'll
Yeah.
start group coaching signups that week too.
Absolutely. Look forward to seeing you all in December. Hope everybody has a great Thanksgiving and a holiday. And please get underway. Sign up for your coaching. Do the things you got to do. Control what's in your control. Reach out to us if you need assistance. If you were not successful in July and you haven't reached out, please do so that I can get with you and we can set your plan for the upcoming exam. Thanks, Tracy. We'll see you soon. And to all of you, thanks for being with us. Take care, everybody. Bye-bye.